After years of trying to do away with birthright citizenship, Donald Trump is one step closer to fulfilling what was once just a fringe idea, and it's thanks to the Supreme Court. In a 6-3 vote along party lines, no surprise there, the conservative majority court has given Trump a major win by allowing the White House to narrow the scope of nationwide injunctions imposed by judges so that they can apply only to states, groups, and individuals that sued. This means Trump's proposal to end birthright citizenship can likely move forward, at least in part, although the specifics remain to be seen, and it could still be blocked by courts on other grounds. Following the court's decision, Trump took to the briefing room to celebrate the ruling.
Thanks to this decision, we can now promptly file to proceed with numerous policies that have been wrongly enjoined on a nationwide basis. And some of the cases we're talking about would be ending birthright citizenship, which now comes to the fore. That was meant for the babies of slaves. It wasn't meant for people trying to scam the system and come into the country on a vacation. I want to just thank again the Supreme Court for this ruling. It's a giant. It's a giant. And they should be very proud, and our country should be very proud of the Supreme Court today.
And joining us now is Krish O'Mara Vignarajah, President and CEO of Global Refuge and former policy director for former First Lady Michelle Obama. Krish, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. So to begin, I, of course, want your reaction to this decision. And I think to sort of spell out for us, how different of a country are we now today than we were just a few days ago because of this decision?
It is a significant decision, and I think it's important to understand what it decided and what it didn't. This was obviously a decision that was not on the merits of birthright citizenship, but it was incredibly important because it did affect nationwide injunctions. Remember, during the first term, it was nationwide injunctions that struck down family separation, protected DACA, temporarily halted the Muslim travel ban. And so what the president now has from the Supreme Court is a permission slip to advance an extreme, and I would say unpopular immigration agenda. Now remember, only 41% of people approved this agenda, but he said this from the White House yesterday. This is what he believes is going to embolden his opportunity. But I think in the end, when we do decide the issue itself, I think there's a huge opportunity because the executive order contradicts, it's one, unconstitutional, two, it is impossible to understand how it's actually going to be implemented, three, it's unpopular, 3/4 of Americans support birthright citizenship, and frankly, four, I think it's un-American in the sense that the Constitution provides a simple and plain promise, which is if you're born in the United States, you are American.
Okay, so I have been asking every expert I see this question. What actually happens to babies who are born in states that are not covered by this injunction? I know there's like a 30-day pause and all of that, but like let's say there's a baby that's born in New Hampshire, which is not party to this lawsuit. That baby, I guess, is not a citizen, but then if the family, from child of undocumented parents, let's say, but then if the baby, and the family go across the border to Massachusetts, they become a citizen. Like, how does any of this work?
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay.
I mean, just and when simple questions like, are nurses and doctors going to decide this issue in the delivery room? When they were asked of Attorney General Bondi yesterday, her reaction was starting a shouting match. And I think this is the question, right? Like, are we going to institute a birth registry to identify the parents of any given child? Is USCIS, Citizenship and Immigration Services, going to start proctoring paternity tests in order to ensure that someone has, the opportunity to have citizenship? A baby born in Baltimore will now have a different set of rights than a baby born in Boise.
Was your read of that moment with Attorney General Pam Bondi, was it that she didn't know the answer to that question, as in the administration hasn't actually thought through what they would like this process to look like? Or is it that the administration doesn't want to tell us what their plan for what this process would look like actually is?
I think it is probably more the former than the latter, just because we've never done this, right? We have over 100 years of constitutional precedent. There has been a long established understanding that if you're born in America, you're an American. And so I think when she started thinking through these questions of who's going to decide? How are you going to decide? I think she was stuck. And, you know, of course, the Supreme Court wasn't making the decision on that issue, and so we do have time. It is interesting that class actions have now been filed already. We're going to see a hearing on this on Monday, but I do think they need to start hashing these out because this is a major decision. Some children could be left stateless as a result of it.
If you were to fast forward this to when the Supreme Court will actually hear the debate around the legality of birthright citizenship and being revoked, not a procedural issue with injunctions as it is now, how does that retroactively work? Meaning if in the period or in the interim period between yesterday's decision and an October, potentially an October decision or a future date decision, what happens retroactively to all of the potentially stateless people that are born in this country? Do they just go back and say, well, the last several months were wrong, now we're going to go back and reinstitute or reissue American citizenships to people who are born in this 6-month period?
Yeah. Our country is not good at managing the chaos of what they're creating,
right,
which is why you have a stable system. To upend it in this way without having coherent answers to simple questions is incredibly unnerving.
Yeah.
And I think it is a reflection of what we are seeing in the immigration space more broadly. I mean, we're talking about deportations of people when you meet quotas, right? Where 70% of people, over 70% of people, don't have a criminal record.
Well, and Krish, that's what I wanted to talk to you about more broadly, since you do so much work in this space, and especially with refugees. What's happening with accepting refugees into America these days? Is it just impossible? We're sending back Afghans who helped us during the war in Afghanistan. It really is a dark time.
It is, and I think this is why you are seeing the shift of American sentiment, because as people are seeing these policies go into place, the rhetoric around we're going to support legal immigration and crack down on the southern border is not playing out in terms of what you're seeing. So refugees, this has been a bipartisan system where people go through extreme vetting, and only when they are admitted while they're in a third country or a refugee camp do they come to the U.S. That was essentially paused and stopped until an injunction was put.
And by that point, we've spent so much money vetting and helping to get people to the third country, right? So it's a wasted investment, essentially,
right,
too.
And then when you think about Afghan allies who risked their lives in order to protect our U.S. troops, our U.S. embassy, America's longest war, the idea that we are now going to revert on our promise, I think is an important issue in terms of, God forbid, the next 21st century war we need to wage, where we need local assets. And I think,
what are you afraid of that this injunction will empower the administration to do next on the immigration battle? I mean, they've gone ahead with birthright citizenship. They're now going ahead with mass deportations. They're revoking temporary status of people. What's the next front of this administration's assault on immigrants' rights in this country?
I think we will continue to see the largest de-documentation of individuals, families who came here through legal pathways in U.S. history. And what that means is the consensus that I think was heartening to see in terms of Americans saying we're a sovereign nation, we need to secure our border, but we also need to strengthen legal pathways at the same time. That consensus is not what we're seeing from the White House.
Can I ask one more question? You mentioned something about class action suits. I have heard this referred to by conservatives as sort of the silver bullet here, like this Supreme Court ruling doesn't actually take anyone's rights away because people can just file class actions, and then that's effectively the same thing as a nationwide injunction. Can you elaborate on that? Is that a magic bullet?
It's not. So you're making me harken back to my law school days, but class certifications are incredibly complicated processes to undertake. They are sometimes years-long efforts. And so in that time period, the paralysis that you're describing is exactly what we're going to see. The value of nationwide injunctions is when you see extreme and unconstitutional actions taking place, especially through executive orders, they are allowed to then immediately halt those from going into effect. Class actions are a remedy, and it is heartening to see that legal advocates have started putting those in place, but they are certainly not a substitute for what we saw in the last several months as well as under the first Trump term.
All right, Krish, it's great to see you on set. Thank you so much for making time for us.